Hi, this is Val Morrill, Arizona Native Plant Society, Yuma chapter, and I'm giving this talk for the first time trying to be automated, but I want to use this as a means to encourage everyone on the chapter to learn about a plant family and present what you've learned to master, what you've mastered to our group. So inside this presentation I'm giving is a format for you yourself to do the same thing with the plant family of your choosing. This title page, for example, you would just put in the plant family, your name, the Yuma chapter, whatever place you're providing it, and the date you're giving it. So on to the next slide. So first, why would we want to be learning about the families? And I think simplicity is the main reason. It's much more within our grasp. So if you look at this map, you see a map of species richness across the United States, and it becomes really clear how complex Arizona appears on that map. It's the 6th largest state, but it is the 3rd most diverse. We are so far with over 4,000 species, and those are out of 1,100 and change with the genera, but 157 families seems like something that maybe someone could actually accomplish. So that's why we're going to focus on learning the families. So when you're trying to learn to identify plants, the things that are really important is that you have good observation, and at times measurement's important too. And that you're doing kind of a detective-like or logical thinking, and it's kind of this process of elimination that you use. Well, it can't be this because of that, and that is usually how people use what's called a taxonomic key. The one thing that becomes a problem with keys often is they're most often based on sort of location. So if that plant occurs in that general area, then there's going to be a part of it in the key, but there is a reliance on that more than actual, relationship of plants within families. So certainly use tools, keys, checklists, guides, botanical gardens, all kinds of, well, like our group, for example, a source of a tool for you. So with the next slide, the alternative we're going to adopt for this presentation is something that's promoted in a book called Botany in a Day, The Patterns Method of Plant Identifications. So the concept, again, with keys and field guides is they're often organized by flower color or other types of similar approaches, but they don't often have a context to relationship. There are lots of different plants that have yellow flowers that aren't completely related to each other, but if you have to use that as your first means to try to deduce what you have, you can see that it doesn't really help you in subsequent efforts with new unknown plants. However, if you can learn the diagnostic features of major families, all of a sudden, as we just saw in that previous slide, you get to narrow it's one of 157 families instead of one of 4,000 some species. So the one thing I will say is the title is a little misleading. Even as a botanist, it's not something where I could actually have learned botany in a day, completely learning the system. So sorry about that. You can get the book, or you can certainly see the other wonderful resources Thomas L. Pell has available at his website. That link is shown right below the book, so I recommend clicking on that and taking a look. Okay, resources that we have in Arizona. I'm going to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4. SciNet is wonderful because of all the different plants that they have noted collections, and it's probably time we should do another little review of how to use SciNet. But it's something I used a lot, for example, in putting together this talk. The Arizona Wildflowers is an app that I know for sure is at least available on Android systems. It's a free app, It does rely on location and flower color and some of those just basics of how to get around, but it's still a really handy. Down below you can see kind of a schematic of what its screenshots look like. And then another tool that's very useful is Plants of Arizona. Again, is going to be reliant on flower color to get you first started in what you're deciding. So there's other resources here. There's also, I have to get this added to this list. There's a great book on plants of the Sonoran Desert that I haven't shown here too. That's also a falcon guide. Okay, so that's helpful. And then there's nothing that really takes the place of the experience in the field. So I recommend getting a chance to explore all of the wonderful public lands and other resources we have in our environment, the areas around Yuma that we can get to, that should have, especially this year in 2019, where this coming winter and spring should be something that we have some real wildflowers to look at. All right, so here's the slide that I would recommend you use in getting to learn about a family and then presenting it to us. So first of all, I see sort of 3 different slides at least that you would want to tell us. First, tell us about the family. What is the family name mean? What's kind of the story about it? That may or may not be significant. But we'd also like to know some of just the information about it. Is it New World, Old World, both? How many genera and species? Are there ones that have anything special that sort of make it an interesting family, like a rarity or invasiveness, or has it got herbal or edible or other interesting things about it? And I'd be curious, just why did this particular plant family interest you, and let us know why you picked it. So I've made in big bold that the main part of this is what are those diagnostic features? What characteristics of this plant family make it unique? How would you know without knowing plants that that plant is a part of the family, because they have these key identifiers that you can narrow it down to know, hey, at least I know it's in this family. If you want to, there's also where the whole world of genetics is opening up a lot of changes to plant taxonomy. So if that's been something significant to the family, you might want to talk about genetic and the indicators that are now redefining these relationships within and between plants. I like to use the agave as an example of this. You know, the agave used to be in its own family, the Agaveaceae. Now it's in the Asparagaceae, and the ability to see an asparagus and an agave as being related is a little daunting at first. But when you think of that century plant putting up that big stalk that it does every once in a while in the agave family, or I'm sorry, the agave subfamily, I guess now, then you can think it kind of looks like a giant asparagus spear, doesn't it? So they are now seeing those genetic relationships where they hadn't really seen them before, and just looking at the features. So that's the main piece we want to know. So we will all own how to know that family. But then I think, why would this have any relevance to our Yuma area? So here we'd want to know what species in the family might occur in our area, both Yuma itself and then really just across the Sonoran Desert, I think would make sense. So Southwest Arizona, Southeast California, Northern Mexico. Give us pretty pictures. We want to see pictures of photos of some of these plants. So that would be important. I think the distribution maps, all of these 3 things here in relevance are things that are readily available on SciNet. And we'd be happy to help you unload or download, upload, something, load any of that information to help you in your talk. Okay, so distribution. And then take a species or 2, some individuals that you think we'd want to know more about, that you thought was special. And in particular, sometimes there are type specimens, which means that the plant was discovered the first time it was ever documented is called a type specimen. And some of those actually occurred in the Yuma area, and that would be, I think, of interest to our group. So that would be one of the examples of anything of special interest. And lastly, don't panic. You can do this. As I said, almost all of it's available on SciNet, and you will own the family forever once you have completed doing a presentation. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right. So here's my demonstration, an example of how I would see each of us doing these presentations. I'm going to give the first here, and I'm calling my presentation the Beginner's Guide to Know All About the Asteraceae. And even though I'm not physically present there in Yuma, I'm hoping this will be posted by December 19th, 2019, our usual third Thursday meeting time, and we'll have it available for people to download at their leisure and get the presentation, which I'm presenting virtually to the Yuma chapter of the Arizona Native Plant Society. So if you want to include a table of contents, this is what I'm calling the Asteraceae, too many syllables, A to Z table of contents. So about the family, what's in its name, some cool data, and why I picked this family. Then I'm going to focus pretty heavily on diagnostic features, so all of you would know the field characteristics of when you're seeing an Asteraceae plant, and that then helps you know it's not one of the other 157 families if you're in Arizona. And then I'm going to talk about the relevance to Yuma, gives the list of species that should occur here in that family, photos, maps, and anything of special interest, which of course I have something of special interest. Okay, about the Asteraceae family. It's known commonly as the sunflower family, daisy family, or aster family. These are all some of the choices. There's others. The family interested me because I hoped it would be an example for me to use for us to learn about the families. So learn this family, but also learn about how to learn about the families, if that made sense. So the scientific name is Asteraceae in recognition of its type genus Aster. So that's the type that then they determined as being the diagnostic one, the sort of beginning of deciding this family. So it's the type genus. Aster is the Latin name for star, and it was derived originally from the Greek word for star. And until recently, and by that I mean in the past several decades, the family was known as the Compositae in recognition of the composite head of ray flowers, disc flowers, or both flowers on the same flower head. And the Compositae, which is now Asteraceae, was first described in 1792 by the German botanist Paul Dietrich Giesecke, is how I think it's pronounced. The name change for Compositae to Asteraceae, similar with a few other families, was to get this consistency, so all plant families had the same ending of ACA. So that was the main point, instead of having some with weird endings where people wouldn't know just by looking at it that it was a family designation. So some facts about Asteraceae is it is a very, very large family. It is a cosmopolitan family, and it's a very advanced family, meaning that a lot of the features it exhibits are pretty sophisticated and recent. It occurs in every continent except Antarctica, and it is as high north as the subpolar regions. There are approximately 33,000 species known to date, of which 640 or so have been described in Arizona. There's some discussion going on at the time as to whether or not it is the largest plant family. That's normally recognized as orchids, but some discussion is getting underway as to whether or not Asteraceae may actually be the largest, but still, no matter what, it is very large. Okay, so the main feature of my talk is what makes an Asteraceae an Asteraceae. How, when you look at one of these, an unknown plant, would you immediately, well, not maybe immediately, but be able to determine using your observation and deduction, skills of observation and deduction, know that a plant you're looking at was. And the main thing that is a pattern is the sunflower that we know as a flower is actually a flower head made up of many, many flowers, often many, many other flowers. And there is two types. One is the disc flower and the other is the ray flower, sometimes called the ligule. Well, I don't want to get into that. So the thing that sometimes looks like a flower petal on a sunflower is actually a real miniature flower all in itself. If you look right in the middle, you'll see even the quote petals are individual flowers. So key things is, I think the easiest thing I could use as an example of how you would know is if any of you eat artichokes, then think about how you would be taking that artichoke apart as you're enjoying it for dinner sometime. But it has, just knowing what it's like, I think gives you much of what you need to know about the characteristics of this family. Those outer, quote, leaves that you dip into butter or mayo and then squeeze through your teeth aren't leaves. They're not sepals either. They're actually a bract called a filiary. So those are bracts surrounding and protecting the flower head. The choke that we scrape off so we can get to the good part is the many, many disc flowers. If you can see in the picture, you'll see, well, it doesn't really show up too well. Oh, yes, it does. See the thing called pappus hair, the sepals, they're modified sepals. That's the actual part that is that choke that we scrape off so we can get to the good stuff. If you ever eat that stuff, it's awful. It's just, because it's all those bristles, those pappus hairs, or modified sepals. And then once you've got the choke off, you'll have this heart, as we call the artichoke heart, and that really good stuff. But you can see, looking at that as a flower cup, it's a head holding many. It's actually determined to be a fused raceme, which is a kind of flower structure, a floral structure. So the good part there is the actual head or the involucre that's holding all those many, many flowers. I think the other thing I would mention, and this time instead of thinking artichoke, think sunflower. All of those little flowers are making one seed, that's like the sunflower seed. So each flower has one seed that's produced to it. Just to show you how diverse the family can look, is you've got 3 different members of the sunflower family there. The thistle is an example of a flower head that's only disc flowers. There are no petals. The dandelion has ray flowers, or I'm sorry, not petals. There are no ray flowers. Can't say petals. The dandelion has the ray flowers only, and then the desert star has both. You can see in the center the disc flowers and then the white ray flowers surrounding it, looking like petals but are not petals. Just the only other thing to say is most of the members of the family are forbs or herbaceous plants, so not woody, although there are some, and that most have taproots. Okay, next. So just to kind of make that simplistic in the kind of cartoons showing these features, the first picture on the left there is the picture of the ray flower, or in this case they call it a ligulate floret, showing all those parts. So that's the actual ray flower, then what a disc flower looks like, and then hopefully the schematic showing what the overall flower structure on the outside, those bracts or filiaries, the disc that holds in place all of the disc being that fused or contracted raceme, is the cup that or disc that holds the disc flowers, and then you can see an example of a ray floret as well. So this, I hope, will make it so you can always identify the Asteraceae members once you've figured out, aha, this is the case. Of course, obviously you need either a flower or seed head to be able to have that work. All right, so what is its relevance to the Yuma area? Well, this from SciNet is a where within the greater Yuma area, where you see the yellow heart is kind of on the where Yuma is, you can see that this just a shotgun blast of collections. It's more of not where are there plants in the family, but where are there not plants in the family. It's very, very broad in its and deep in its coverage in the Yuma area. So yes, it has real significance. I would venture to say by all means it's the most common family we're to encounter here in our area. So using SciNet, here is a checklist of what members of the sunflower family are in the area of Yuma. I did a 30-mile radius around Yuma and came up with 83 species that could possibly occur. And you can see right here some of the variety. I'm looking at this purple flower down in the second page on the lower, let's see, what is that, lower right corner. You can see it, the purple ray flowers and yellow disc flowers. So here's, I'm just staying on this page a little bit so you guys can take a chance to feast your eyes. I can see my namesake Bebia down in the bottom of the left page, which is only disc flowers, as you can see. Spanish needles would be another example of that. Okay, I'm going on to the next slide. So here are the remaining species that occur in the Yuma area. Yeah. Okay. Others that we're familiar with, obviously, just to think about ones that are in your daily lives, Echinacea would be something that comes to mind. Dandelion. There's lots and lots of weeds that are in the Asteraceae family. All right. So my focus plant is on the Algodones or Algodones dune sunflower. I picked it because although I can't quite pinpoint exactly, it appears that the type specimen was collected here and originally collected by the U.S.-Mexico boundary expedition in 1859. That time the scientific name was Helianthus tephrodes. Now it's considered to be Helianthus niveus tephrodes, so it's a subspecies. And in California, it's on the state endangered species list. I'm not sure if it's really quite as rare as it's been reported, but if you'd like more information about this particular species, there's a link down below that will pull up a PDF file that was done by some California folks that gives more information about this particular species. I would mention I've seen it this winter. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, there's a RV lot that's on the south, just off the south frontage road there, and all in front of his frontage there on the frontage road where these sunflowers, and I'm saying, please, whatever you do, don't have them pull these up. These are very cool, very unique plants, and they're growing right there. He says, oh, I thought they were weeds. So that's my special one I wanted to share with you. And that's all there is to it. And you, yes, you can do this too. And I think that what I'd like to ask is, there should be a way, once I get this somehow posted, to be able to leave comments or questions, and I hope you do. I also hope you say, hey Val, can I please be the one that gets to give the talk on the pea family or the grass family or the lily family. So anyway, I know that we have one upcoming in January, hopefully, that Irv Barnes will be giving on the caltrop family. So you certainly want to learn all about that. All right, well, thank you, and I hope to hear back from you all. Bye now. That's all, folks.